a song for you.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Askin, here with another song from one of my favorite Deep Purple albums of all time, Fireball. This one, this is a pretty interesting song, very much a departure from where Mark II had been heading in the, let's make it explosive and entertaining and well, I mean, it's still entertaining, but it's not very dramatic or hard rock. And some people would criticize this as a difficult turn for Deep Purple listeners, but personally, I absolutely love this song. It's such a simple and fun song. It's as close to country as Deep Purple would ever get, at least up to the point I'm recording this. Who knows what the new album will hold? We'll find out soon enough. Supposedly, the expectation is sometime this year. I know that they're going into the studio to start writing, but I've seen their album take over a year to be released, and not just because of COVID, just from the time that they finish recording until everything's done and all the promotion and everything, the printing and all that is done. And a lot of that, my understanding, is due to just the backup of printing vinyl. There's only so many plants that print it. And the backlog was so heavy that they just couldn't, first come, first serve. So it's unfortunate, but that does happen. Eventually the albums, they do come out, thankfully. And then, of course, I think it was Whoosh that was delayed due to COVID, and Turning to Crime seemed to come out pretty quick, but Whoosh didn't. And that's okay, because eventually we got it all, and that's the most important thing. It had to have been Whoosh because Infinite was pre-COVID. But anyway, Anyone's Daughter, really cool track from Fireball. Another great story tale from Ian Gillan. Interestingly, this song was only played once during the Fireball tour. That would have been June 24th, 1971 in England, and was played a total of 74 times live so far. However, the second time it was played was not until September 24th of 1993. So huge 22-year gap before it would be played again. 93, I believe that would be with Steve. No, that would be with Richie because it was on Come Hell or High Water, which I'll talk about in a second. But the most recent time it was performed live, all this according to Setlist FM, of course, was in Austria, October 27th, 1993. So it has been quite some time, another, 32 years now? So, I would welcome this coming back into the set because it's such a fun song. There is a great version of this live on the Come Hell or High Water video, which is a very, very interesting concert, one of Richie's final shows with the band. A lot of controversy over whether that should have been released to the public or not, but it happened in front of the public. So, I mean, that's how life goes. But an interesting show in their history, nonetheless. It shows that a change was definitely needed for all parties at that point, and for the audience, I think, as well. And those people that are, no Richie, no Deep Purple, watch that video and tell me the band should have stayed together in that configuration. But what's really interesting about it is in a rare event, because this doesn't happen often, the drummer comes out from behind the drum kit, sits in a chair, out exposed to the audience behind the protection of their Fortress. And I have to say, I mean, Ian Pace had been doing some drum clinics, which was basically like some demos and question and answer and stuff. In fact, there's a really cool one with Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And one of the things that's really cool about that is that they play the opening of Space Truckin' together, because Chad said that he was always fascinated by one of the fills at the beginning of that song. And it's actually a pretty standard Ian Pace fill, just a buzz roll going across from the snare to the toms. But It just like I can't even imagine what it would be like to sit down and play drums with Ian Pace. That must be just incredible. But anyway, so he was used to being out in front of the crowd a little bit at that point. I'm not sure exactly when he started doing that, but so they would sit him down. He would sit there with a tambourine. He would sit next to John Lord so that they could set up the tempo together as John Lord does the opening. And it looks like, and I've never seen it, but it looks like they must have set him up with like an electronic trigger because he's playing bass drum, but there's no bass drum there. So it must have been an electronic floor trigger. And he's playing that and tambourine, which is weird to see because you don't, I mean, he's usually playing drums, so you don't really see him playing just the tambourine. Usually the vocalist will do that. But yeah, it's really cool to see, and they do a great version of it. Lots of fun, and it's just neat to hear that that song made it to the stage because that's one that you would think might just be an album track. So the fact that that actually got performed a bunch of times is a lot of fun to me. That just makes me smile. But I say let's check it out. This is a little bit of a weird opening. I don't know whose decision it was to put this footage together to open the song. This is sometimes done by the producer or engineer and said, hey, what do you guys think? I cut this thing together to open up the song. Or they could have said, hey, we need something, come up with something. Could have been one of the band members sitting with the engineer and working. I mean, I really don't have any documentation on how the opening was done. All I know is we get what we get, and I say we check it out. Here it is, Anyone's Daughter by Deep Purple. Quiet, but we get a lot of just studio chatter, people playing around on instruments, maybe doing some sound checking and that. Just little cuts here and there pieced together, and they definitely sound edited. You know, you can almost hear the splice in the tape, but it's cool. It's just a little bit of something different, a little bit of insight into just the background sound of what it's like to be in the studio. So something interesting, I know it's very quiet, but if you can hear it, something interesting about this part while Richie's warming up to start playing the song is that we hear what sounds like a metronome. Now, bands weren't recording to click tracks back then. So my guess is what we're actually hearing, and I remember pointing out that we can hear this on when the Deep Purple podcast did the Fireball Rankings episode. And it occurs to me what this probably is, actually, is Ian Pace with his drumsticks and just, you know, hitting the drumsticks in the background to set the tempo for the song and start it. Because it sounds very metronome-y, but I have a feeling it's really Ian Pace. Listening to Richie play this, and you know, I've always just enjoyed it. I love the sound of that, but something kind of occurs to me because I'm hearing the low notes playing out solid, and I'm hearing the higher note doing that bend that sounds very country, something that would typically be played like on a steel guitar. But what I'm wondering is that two different tracks, or is he keeping that low note maybe just open and then bending the other string? I really don't know. So for you guitar players, I would be curious to find out a little bit more about how that was played. Was that two tracks or one? Now, obviously, we're getting a second guitar here, which is more electric and has a little bit of reverb on it. And I like the contrast of that from the opening guitar sound, which is a little bit dry. But then we're about to get a third sound in here, which is a little more of that, fluid movement across the strings. So I'm wondering, kind of the same thing. Like it leads a little bit more to my argument that that's a second guitar that we're hearing at the beginning, that he's just doing that bend on a separate track. But I don't know. Tell me what you guys think.
stood under your bedroom window throwing up a brick. No one came, I threw one more, that really did the trick. Your daddy came and banged my head. He said, what kind of man is this that's hanging round my girl? Threw me in the can.
Now, from a drummer's perspective, it would be interesting to have been recording this song. And I don't know whether Ian Paice was playing tambourine at the same time he was playing the bass drum or not playing tambourine at all. I don't know who's doing what. But to just sit there and play bass drum without anything else to mark the time, like, you know, drummers, especially Ian Paice, is really good at this. And we've talked about this, keeping time with his hi-hat foot. But to just play the bass drum and keep such a solid tempo, there would be a tendency to speed up a little bit, I think. So I don't know if he's playing tambourine to help him keep that rhythm, or, like I said, if that's a separate track or not. But certainly very solid playing, considering he's not playing anything else.
You're a farmer's daughter, you're a farmer's daughter. Why do I always get the kind of girl I didn't ought to get? I won't get no more eggs and water. Now I've laid the farmer's daughter.
Obviously, this is a song about finding love. Or really, okay, the dude just wants to get laid, let's face it. But it's a great topic. I love the prose of the way that he tells the story. It's a lot of fun. Great lyrics. I love the structure of this. And you guys know I'm not a big lyrics guy, but this is one that you just have to hone in on because it's such a fun story. Thinking about the drums, listening to this passage, I did some little experiment here and just, you know, tapped along to the bass drum. But what I found I was doing was actually bouncing my knee in between to keep the time. So maybe that's what Ian was doing. Again, don't know. I've not seen a clip where we really get to clearly see what he's doing, but live he also plays the tambourine, so he could be using that to keep the time. But yeah, so I'm really only lifting my foot to lift what would be the pedal where the hit goes, but I'm bouncing my knee in the meantime to keep that tempo. So maybe that's what he did. I don't know. I mean, Roger Glover did describe him as a human metronome, so it's very possible he could have just played it straight. But yeah, it's a fun piece. It's just such a departure, especially coming off of the last couple songs on the album and then coming into this. It's just something unexpected, which makes it fun. It's something different if you're really into listening to Deep Purple at any given time, and you've listened to like 5 or 6 hard drive-in rock songs, and you're like, you know what, I still want to listen to Deep Purple, but I want something a little different. This is a great go-to song. It's like a palate cleanser when you're just listening to one hard rock song after another. What a fluid performance from Jon Lord there. I mean, just such beautiful playing, flawless as far as I'm concerned. You could almost, see him playing this on an old upright piano in a saloon. It just fits that feeling so well, but it's just that fluid motion of his fingers. The rhythm he's keeping is flawless, and I always loved that solo from him. In the back of that, we're getting a bit of a variation of a walking bass line from Roger, which I really like. I'd never heard until now that there's some double notes there, ba-bum, along with what Ian Paice is playing, but Ian Paice is not doing it quite the way that Roger does. They're not duplicating each other. But it's a really nice variation of a walking bass line, which keeps it interesting. And then halfway through, we start getting those sweeps from Ritchie. I love the sound of this song. If you would have said, hey, Deep Purple wrote a country-ish song and it's really good, and I've just come off of In Rock, let's say. I haven't gotten Fireball yet, and one of my buddies gets it, and they're like, hey, you got to check out this Anyone's Daughter song. It's like a great country song. I would think you're probably thinking of a different band, because coming off of In Rock, this would have never been expected. But I'm so glad that they did this song, and I'm really glad that they decided to include it on the album instead of ditching it and hoping that maybe we would hear it as a bonus track someday.
Imagine I was a full-grown man and I could talk just right. Could I come and see you here and do this every night? Wham! The door comes crashing down, your daddy's face all pale. Says, come with me, you hairy bum, I'll put you in my jail. You're a judge's daughter, you're a judge's daughter. Why do I always get the kind of girl I didn't ought to get? Now I'm getting jail and torture, 'cause I made the judge's daughter. Yes, I did. It was nice.
Nice. That's a great way to describe a romantic involvement. I love that little throw-in line, though. I mean, I don't know if that was written or if he just in the moment said that. But that's kind of how I feel. I feel like it was just something that in the moment he threw in and they decided to keep it. Very natural sounding. It didn't sound scripted or anything. So yeah, great delivery on that. But it's like those little touches, like Richie throwing in a little thing in between, like going from a verse into a chorus or halfway through a chorus or something like that. Just those little flourishes that he does. This is Ian's version of that. And I love that. I think that's, really what makes... One of the things I should say that makes Deep Purple's music so magical is that they know when to put in those extra touches that make things special instead of it just being like, okay, here's the chorus, here's the verse. Love that. And I think of again, so many songs where like this, those would be the difference makers to me between a song that's pretty good and a song that would be amazing is just those little pockets of audio flavor that you get. But great delivery on that. I tend to think of a singer singing songs as they sing them in first person, but I don't necessarily think that they're singing as if it happened to them. Like sometimes they might be recanting someone else's story, but telling it in first person. So he may be like, this isn't my experience, this is somebody else, but I'm going to tell you the story as if I'm them because it makes it easier. It's more interesting. Because if that were the case, I mean, these singers would have incredibly interesting lives that they would never have time to have. So it's great storytelling, though. I absolutely love it. I love the imagery of it. I love that, like, every time he tries to do something fun, he just has to suffer horribly for it. And it's probably a great metaphor for a lot of things in real life. But now we're going to get a little bit of Richie.
It was nice.
Very much matching the fluidity of John's solo. Richie plays this beautifully. It's just such a, you think about how smoothly a train goes down the tracks. And these solos are very much like that. They're so precise in the performance but melodic and really enjoyable to listen to at the same time. I mean, they're just flawless. Would not trade a single note in either of these solos for anything. And then at the end, we're getting that country sounding steel guitar coming back in, and the song is just like the construction of the song, the way it flows together. Another thing that they are so good at, and don't know who did what again on the song. I have nothing as far as notation or history on the song at all. But it is just enjoyable to listen to. It feels like they just sat down and played this in one take, and whether they did or not, I don't know, but it just feels so cohesive and fluid that it's hard to imagine that this would be broken up into multiple takes.
Seems they're screaming law and order when I go with anyone's daughter.
One thing I find fascinating about this that I know I've noticed before but never really paid that much attention to is that the sweeps that we're getting on guitar in the background, I mean, obviously they're being panned to different locations, but they also sound different. And I'm not sure what the cause of that is. It doesn't sound like there's different effects on them, but sometimes they sound a little thin, sometimes they sound a little bit thicker. I don't know what it is, but I really enjoy that because it's just like you're getting something different every time, not a repetitive sound that's just being panned in different spots. And it goes a little bit beyond it being different pitches.
Woman, I should like some peace, and daddy, hold your tongue. I think you're gonna die of fright when I tell you what I've done. I can hear your tales and lies. You see I'm dumb and scraggy, but man, this dumb and scraggy is your daughter's baby's daddy. She's a lucky daughter, such a lucky daughter. Why did I always get the kind of girl I didn't want to get? Now I've got what I always fought for, 'cause I've married a rich man's daughter. What do you think of that?
Something good finally comes of all this messing around. Well done. Yeah, I love that the story had a good ending instead of like you take the tragic ending from Strange Kind of Woman, and then you take this story and you're like, this is going to end badly, but it doesn't. It actually ends up really well for him. And now the parents have a grandkid, and I like that Ian's like, now I'm a father, your daughter is mine, I'm taking authority in this final verse. Instead of being a victim to the father, he's like, look, I'm in charge now. This is my family and you're going to deal with it. And I love that. I love the strength of that. Also, we've had a slow build from Ian Paice. It really started with, going into Richie's solo, where he really picked up the activity on the bass drum there, and some interesting playing during that last verse with, it's interesting to say that there would be fills when you're just hitting one drum, but he put in some really interesting changes in that performance that I would consider being drum fills. Breaking up that rhythm that we had. So that was really interesting and great creativity from Ian Paice. I love that the music behind this last verse is really similar. It's bigger. They're playing, they're doing a little bit more and they're enhancing it. It's a bigger sound, but it's basically the same structure as the first verse, but the vocal flow is completely different than it was. Originally it's like very poetic storytelling, have a certain phrasing to it. And this one's like, everything's changing. I'm taking charge. I'm just going to tell you how it is. I'm not even going to worry about delivering this in like lines of a verse. It just feels like it's like straight talk instead of like poetic speak. And I really like that. So many changes in this that are really cool. And then, of course, that just sarcastic, victorious last line. What do you think of that? Absolutely love that. Interesting. Nice ending from Jon Lord. I like the way that he just kind of wraps up the song a little bit by himself. But there's some talking in the background. I tried to boost it up and hear what they were saying. I have no idea who it was or what they were saying. But that's kind of weird. But just as strange as the song is for a band like Deep Purple to do in the first place, why not end it with something a little weird too? Really cool song. I really liked it. It's one that I've listened to many times. Again, every song on this album just takes me back to a certain point in my childhood. So I'm very, very nostalgic when it comes to this one in particular. All of the older albums really bring me back to something. But this album in particular, probably because I listened to it so much, that it really just pinpoints certain moments in my life. And I love that. But the reason it does that is because I listened to it so much, because I loved it so much. I mean, I enjoyed the songs, wanted to hear them over and over again. And even now, going back and listening to this again, it's been a little bit since I've listened to it because I don't listen to music a whole lot these days. Only because I'm usually doing things where I can't listen to music. It's too distracting, and I can't really sit down and enjoy music the way I used to just sit there and do nothing else but listen and enjoy it and hear everything a band is doing and enjoy the collective sound of a song. I really miss that, but mostly I'm recording music or podcasts or listening to a podcast or, working on something, and I just can't really listen. And since I don't drive anymore, which is by choice. I mean, I can still rent a car and drive, but I don't own a car anymore. So I'm very rarely I'm behind the wheel. So it used to be when I was in the car, when I lived in Vegas, when I was driving to the Strip and back, that's when I would listen to music. So it mostly comes down to when I'm cooking or cleaning. And sometimes even then I'm listening to trying to catch up on the shows that my friends do, because there's so many now. But it's a great song, a real departure from what they were doing before. But I think it just goes to show the creativity that you could challenge these guys with a song. Hey, you know what? Why don't you throw a country style song on this album? And they can still do it in spades. This is a great track. I love it. I wouldn't mind at all if they brought this back into the live set. But herein lies the problem. You've got 20 plus albums now. I think, what is it? The new one will be 25, I think. So in consideration of that, when you're talking about, not every album had a song that was, a chart topper. But when you're talking about having so many albums out and the fans will I want to hear this from that album. I wish you guys would do this. I'd love to hear that. And of course, they're only going to pick from albums that Ian Gillan sang on. So, it looks like Equals One was 24th album, if you count the concerto, which I do. So yeah, the new one will be album 25. So, there's so many songs. It's like, well, I wish they would do Knocking at Your Back Door. I wish they would do Speed King. I wish they would do this or that. That's the tough thing. I think they're always going to open with Highway Star. And that's fine. That's a great track to set the tone for a concert. And where it goes from there, it goes. But I think that, obviously Smoke on the Water is always going to be there. Black Knight is always going to be there. But everything else is like they really plundered the new album for a lot of material on stage, probably more than any other tour except for Machine Head. And that's only because at one point they had done a tour where they did a regular show and then they did all of Machine Head. So that was really cool to see, because you usually get, a couple of tracks from the new album, and they did quite a few. So who knows with the new album if they're going to do the same thing, if they're going to still mix in a lot from Equals One, if they're going to be playing a lot more classic tunes. I mean, who knows? But that's the fun of Deep Purple, is that they'll just pick some tracks. Like, who would have expected Hard Lovin' Man would be part of their set? I love that they did that. You would expect Smoke on the Water, Hush, Highway Star, Woman from Tokyo. You would expect, because that was a big hit. It's so hard to choose when there's so many and there's only so much time. And of course, the different venues allow them different amounts of time. Even though we saw them back-to-back nights in August of 2024, their set list was 15 minutes shorter the next night because of the city ordinance of when you could start and stop concerts. And that's due to proximity to neighborhoods. I mean, there's so much that goes into that. But I would love to see them perform Anyone's Daughter. It's such a fun song, and their live version of it is great. Obviously a little bit limiting because you only have, so many instruments you can play at the same time. So it does suffer a little bit live just from the multi-tracking that we get here in the studio version, which I do think adds a lot. But you don't necessarily miss it when they're playing it live. I think the live version stands by itself very, very well. So that is Anyone's Daughter. And before I wrap up, I just want to take a moment. I didn't do it yesterday, so I want to take a moment today to thank my patrons. First of all, Corey Morissette, great guy, podcast host extraordinaire. Check out And the Podcast Will Rock. Check out the Ultimate Catalog Clash. Check out The Power of Positive Geeking, a podcast about movies. I've been a guest on all those shows, and it has been a lot of fun. And of course, my good friend William Rose. Thank you guys both for being so supportive of the show. It means a lot to me. If there are new patrons, please remember I record this about 4 to 5 weeks ahead of release, just because I've got things that come up that take me away from doing the podcast for a while. As I'm recording this, I've got a short film score coming up that I'm going to do, so that's going to take me away from recording episodes. So I also like to, with the guests that I have, it's really difficult to coordinate schedules these days. So I like to start about a month ahead, reaching out and saying, okay, your episode's coming up in about a month. Let's get it recorded soon and start working on coordinating our schedules. That way, we get to be on, because the show has a very specific pacing, and I do not want to miss a single episode. That's very important to me. I did that for 299 episodes on Uriah Heep, the Magician's podcast. While I had episodes to do, there was no pause, no missed episodes, and that's very important to have that consistent schedule for me. I know that when podcasts that I enjoy miss an episode, it kind of sucks. It's like, wow, that my week feels different. We become dependent on these things as part of our daily routine and our schedule. And especially when a show comes out as often as this does, it's really weird when there's an episode missed. So it's very important to me. So I like to schedule that much out, so that if I have committed to somebody that, yes, I want to put you in on the show, this particular song, we have plenty of time to coordinate that schedule, because if we can't get it together in 30 days, the show's going to happen. And I want to make sure that I take care of all my guests as well as possible. So thank you guys also for listening, all of those who have shared the show. Probably my top sharer is Mark and Pete at the 70s Weekly Countdown with Mark and Pete. Great show, picking a week from the 70s and doing a countdown of all the songs along with Casey Kasem. Lots of fun. There's so many songs that I know from that era, because that's the music I grew up with. But at the same time, they always pull out these songs that made it into the top 40. And I'm like, I had no idea this was even a song. So it's a lot of fun. Great show. And I just love listening to those guys. Their banter is fantastic. So check that one out. Check out Corey's shows. Check out Deep Purple's podcast, The Deep Purple Podcast, the original Deep Purple podcast. Nate and John do a great job on that show, covering all the Deep Purple albums, extended to the family. Do a lot of just fun and really creative episodes. So check out all those shows, guys. We will see you in the next episode. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.